Today we meet a console that was never officially released by the manufacturer in the UK, and yet here it is. It's NEC's PC Engine repackaged for a PAL region audience, and it's capable of delivering the same gaming greatness as the original, which was the very first of the fourth generation of games consoles. It's held with the highest regard by gamers, but the UK and Europe were hung out to dry. Why was that? Let's meet the TurboGrafx. The TurboGrafx, with the word stylized using an X because it's cool, promises us arcade quality graphics with 512 on-screen colours, awesome sound, and turbocharged gameplay. And that's what was truly on offer, as this was a known quantity in 1990 when the package was produced. In Japan, this games console was released as the PC Engine in 1987, shown here with the CD-ROM expansion. I haven't said CD-ROM for a while, that was enjoyable. The combination of an 8-bit CPU and 16-bit custom chips meant it wasn't truly a 16-bit console, but it was absolutely not a member of the third generation of games consoles, occupied by the likes of the Nintendo NES and the Sega Master System. The PC Engine instead ushered in that fourth generation, and its performance could definitely hold its own shoulder to shoulder with the Sega Mega Drive, which arrived in 1989, and the Super Nintendo in 1990. The first of a new breed of powerful 4th gen consoles, it brought the arcade gaming experience closer than ever to the home, with support from all major game developers. Buoyed by its success at home, NEC reporting 500,000 unit sales in the first week alone of the PC Engine's life, it wanted to recreate that in US markets, and they attempted that in 1989. But Sega had other ideas. It would be the Sega Mega Drive that reached the US market first, branded for that region as the Genesis, and Sega were throwing everything at the US release to try and gain a dominant position in a market that already loved Nintendo's NES. Sega had a head start in releasing their 4th generation console over Nintendo, and it wanted to capitalize on this. The PC Engine would go on sale in the US just 2 weeks after the Genesis launch, and it had been repackaged for the US market as the TurboGrafx 16. The 16 no doubt added to reinforce that this was part of the 16-bit era, in the same way that the Mega Drive had 16-bit displayed prominently on its case design. Unsurprisingly, the TurboGrafx 16 was left struggling in the wake of Sega's launch and its marketing might. By 1991, NEC claimed it had sold 750,000 units in the US, which doesn't sound too bad until you compare it to the 18.5 million Mega Drive and 20 million Super Nintendos that would sell in the region. The TG16 came nowhere near those numbers, nor did it repeat the PC Engine's week 1 sales figures in Japan. It was bombing, man. The TurboGrafx 16 wasn't a lost cause though. A dedicated user base of over 500,000 wasn't to be sniffed at, and a catalogue of games for the US region grew around it, as it wasn't compatible with existing PC Engine games on the HuCard format. Meanwhile, Europe looked on and waited, enjoying the Mega Drive and subsequent Super Nintendo launches. The PC Engine would appear in the exotic console sections of our gaming magazines, and it wasn't uncommon for it to be imported from Japan, but only by the most dedicated. In 1989, in the UK, we had a company called Mention who announced their own unofficial PAL version of the PC Engine. They'd modified it for our region, and they called it the PC Engine Plus, selling it for £199. This was in recognition that gamers on these shores wanted access to the exclusive, standout titles on the console. Still, we waited for an official launch. NEC had planned ahead though. Having cracked America, they intended next to release the console in Europe in 1990. Or at least that was the plan if the cracking America bit went well. And that's exactly what this box on the table was created for, which I'll open up now while I continue to waffle. Now, like the American model, it was fundamentally just a PC Engine inside, rehoused to suit the region's tastes and modified for RTV standards, electrical outlets and things like that. Now the European model was the same shape and size as the US one, but the plastics are a lighter grey and the name had dropped to the 16, preferring now simply TurboGrafx. Inside, it had been adapted for our PAL standard TV sets and ran at 50Hz, and a separate box for the power supply came with it, as within Europe we do have different standards, so that was an easy way to solve that problem. The design of the case isn't going to win any awards, but it's not trying to be anything other than a games console, unlike other multimedia devices of the day. Power plugs in under this removable cover, which also hides an expansion connector. In my box is the driving game Victory Run, and it comes bundled with a single joypad. To use more than one joypad, you'll need a multi-tap device, just like in the original PC Engine. This one is so fresh, it's still got the protective plastic on the joypad and the label on the console itself, and no, I won't be peeling that off today. Like the US model, this is not compatible with Japanese game cards, but it is fully compatible with the US game cards. And the haste with which the European model was put together is perhaps reflected in the manual, which still has the 16 on the TurboGrafx logo on the front, but inside it's only referred to as the TurboGrafx. What Japan calls Hue cards, the manual here calls Turbo Chip Game Card, even though my game card says TurboGrafx 16 and Hue card on it. It's all very mixed up. And I learned something new by reading the manual. Always remove your Turbo Chip game card from the TurboGrafx unit after you've finished playing. As if anyone did that. For a sense of scale, here's the original PC Engine, which you can see is about half the size of the TurboGrafx, despite housing exactly the same thing inside. And a later variant of the PC Engine, the Core Graphics 2 here, was released in 1991, and it clearly takes design cues from the Western releases, while retaining the diminutive original package size. You could almost confuse these with modern mini remakes of old consoles, but this amazingly is how small they were. It's only really when we see the Super Graphics, which was an upgraded version of the PC Engine released in Japan in 1989, a commercial flop, that we see anything from Japan that comes close to the overall dimensions of the TurboGrafx. All of this begs the question though, why does this boxed TurboGrafx console exist if it was never released in Europe? Now to answer that question, we can look to a company called Telegames. When NEC abandoned their plans for Europe, it was Telegames who swooped in and bought up a chunk of TurboGrafx stock. Like-minded companies also did exactly the same in Spain and Portugal, for example. Telegames was a US company, not to be confused with Tele-Games, which was a Sears brand used for video gaming, no connection whatsoever there. And a UK division of Telegames opened in 1988, and that company remains active to this day over here despite US operations having ceased. Telegames have a history of distributing games as far back as things like Bumpman on the ColecoVision in 1986, and their back catalogue comprises mostly of ports and re-releases, often on less successful platforms. Double Dragon on the Atari Lynx, for example, and Brutal Sports Football on the Jaguar. They're even credited as being the only remaining Atari Jaguar software publisher as late as 1997. Acquiring and releasing excess TurboGrafx stock then is in line with their thinking. Telegames are happy to serve a niche, and they continue to do so with the TurboGrafx stock for years. You could still buy one as late as 2011, and I did many years ago, as you can see in this old footage here which I've dug out. A time long ago before we had a museum to put such things in, and I actually sold that one many years ago to a collector. So despite NEC having never released the console themselves in Europe, there were plenty of TurboGrafx floating around if you wanted to add one to your collection. But would you actually want to do that? Is there a drawback to playing PC Engine games in this manner? Well, the answer to that is less than ideal. Yes, it's running at 50Hz, so it's slower than the US and Japanese models. In addition, as it was never officially released here, no games were made for this region. So that means you'll be playing only the US library of games because it's not compatible with the Japanese cards, and they were all designed for the 60Hz system. This was the case with the Mega Drive and Super Nintendo too, of course, but because games were made specifically for this region, they were often tweaked and adapted to give the best possible experience. Borders added to improve frame rates, for example. Or sometimes, yes, games just ran slower. In the case of the TurboGrafx, no such regional tweaks existed, so it sounds bad, but in practice, I'm still having a good time. These side-by-side comparisons show a Japanese PC engine on the left and a TurboGrafx on the right. Now the picture quality is better on the left due to that having an RGB signal, and our TurboGrafx is using its standard composite output, so just ignore that for now. It's the frame rate we're really looking at. If you look carefully, it is smoother on the Japanese model, but it does remain entirely playable on the TurboGrafx. Now I haven't found any specific examples, but in some games apparently there are timing bugs, and I've noticed in Power Drift, for example, every now and then I see a bit more flickering than I otherwise would on the Japanese model. So in summary, if you want the very best from the PC engine, then get a PC engine, not a TurboGrafx. It's really that simple. Finally, could this have been a success in the UK? If this had reached our shops as planned in 1990, then its competition would have been the Sega Mega Drive. The Super Nintendo didn't arrive here until 1992. It would have faced the same stiff market conditions as it did in the US, fighting Sega's marketing for recognition, and it may well have faced the same fate as it did in the US. But, on the other hand, we do love an underdog here, and the library of games for the system was formidable. With the TG16 retailing at $199 US, I'd expect the TurboGrafx to have retailed at under £200, making it price competitive with the Sega Mega Drive. And if it got a UK release and a little bit of traction, it would have been interesting to see what UK and European software houses might have done with the hardware if it was a success at home. That, however, is a what if that we can't truly answer, so I'd be interested in your thoughts in the comments section. How would this have played out if it was officially released and supported in this region? As always, thank you for taking the time to watch this tech nibble. If you'd like to come and try it out for yourself and everything else on offer here, do book a ticket at retrocollective.co.uk. And if you'd like to support the channel and the museums, head to patreon.com/The Retro Collective. Take care.